All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of A Sip of Knowledge with Liz Rhoades and Lou Bryson, plus this week's special guest, Dr. Anna Sulan Masing, who I will let your hosts give a more formal introduction to in just a moment. Before I turn things over, though, I'm Will Hookinga with Zavvy.co and just wanted to point out a couple of ways you can interact with your hosts and their guests during the live stream today. So on your right, you'll see a chat box. Feel free to say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. It's always great to see that. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little button that says Ask a Question. So if you have a question at any point during the show, just tap that button, enter in your question. I'll be keeping an eye out for those throughout the show. And then last but not least, feel free to invite your friends to join us. There's a share button at the top that makes it easy to do that. But with that out of the way, Liz, Lou, I will turn things over to you now.
Thanks. Well, as always, hey everyone, so excited. So we've been off for a few weeks, but we're back in action, and I gotta tell you, I'm so excited to see this guy's face over here, Lou, and of course Anna's as well. We've got a special guest today for you. But I did want to just do a quick call out. It is Boss Hog 9 launch day, everyone. I am sorry. Thank you. It's been 9 months in the making, and cheers to everyone on my team. Woo, we did it.
Is this your first one?
This is my first Boss Hog. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For those of you just joining, I'm Liz Rhoades. Hi. Technical distiller and spirit consultant. I have over a decade of experience in alcoholic beverage, spanning across several different sites and spirit types, including beer, rum, vodka. I'm sorry. My particular favorite expertise is, of course, in this fabulous brown liquid here, which is whiskey. I spent most of my career at a tiny little mom and pop shop known as Diageo, but currently head of whiskey development at Whistlepig Whiskey. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to keep talking about Boss Hog 9. That's our show today, and it's been fabulous. And I also run a small consulting company on the side called Spirit Safe Consulting. Of course, you can find me on my website. I think there's a link down below. But in the meantime, I'm going to kick it off to Lou.
Thank you, Liz, and congratulations again. Big day. I am Lou Bryson, spirits writer. Have been doing that for almost 30 years now. For 20 years, I was the managing editor at Whiskey Advocate magazine, and currently plugging my most recent book, Whiskey Masterclass. A book, there it is, thank you so much, about flavor and aroma creation in whiskey, tracking down all the myriad ways that occurs and accumulates. Today I am drinking Rare Perfection, another of an apparent unending series of found Canadian whiskeys that people are pulling out and bringing down. This is a 15-year-old example. Not sure how much of it there is, but it's out there. 15 years old, cask strength, 119.7 proof, and it's drinking pretty well. So, yeah. What's that? Sorry?
Sipping pretty good.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, it really is. This is not going to be the first ounce I pour of this, I'm afraid. Or last, excuse me. It is the first. Never mind. Anyway, that's my story. And I'm going to throw it back to you, Liz, to introduce our guest.
Awesome. So Anna and I met at Whiskey Life Paris a couple weeks ago. And again, I enjoyed our interaction so much. Not only did we have a quick interview last week, but I was like, we have to have her on our show. So Dr. Anna Masing on our show today, she writes about a lot of different things, and she's written about it for quite a bit, including cheese.
Yes.
So she's a food, booze, and cultural writer, and we're super happy to have her on our show today. So thank you, Anna, for being a part of our little ensemble.
Thank you so much. This is really exciting. I like I like being able to talk about, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about loads of things, but I like the idea of being focused on booze, because I feel like, I don't get to talk about how much I like booze and those topics as much as I'd like to. But I also have a drink. So I made it old fashioned because I was going to look. You can't actually see the color, but also I saw that. So last year I made a whiskey bitters from some Westwood whiskey, and you guys have got Westwood next week. So I was like, I'll make it old fashioned with a Westwood, and then we can talk about that. A nice little segue.
Can we just do like a virtual cheers real quick?
Yeah.
Lou.
Cheers.
Right there.
All right,
very
so
nice.
we started off.
Wow, sorry.
Yeah.
Ooh, that really is 118 proof. Holy crap. I was trying to be nonchalant, but I wasn't pulling it off. Sorry.
So we start off every show basically just inquiring about what's your background? Like, how did you get into the position of writing about booze? But of course, you write about other things. So maybe just walk us through a quick little background of.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I actually come from a theater background.
That's right.
Wow.
So and dance was kind of my thing. I did get to the end of my undergraduate and realized I didn't really like being on stage, which is crucial part.
Sorry.
Moment for sure.
So radio drama then.
Yeah. But yeah, so I decided it was like, telling the story was super interesting, and writing the story and directing and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I did. I had a theater company and for a number of years, and then I went back and did a PhD looking at how my family, my dad's indigenous from East Malaysia, from Borneo, and how his community and peoples tell stories, and then how that kind of stories and identities travel in space and location, how they change when space and location changes. And then once I started getting into that, I realized that all the stories, and so many big epic stories, are based on farming and farming cycles. And so everything I was talking about was just about food and farming. So then after doing academia, I decided that, and I did a show and I created kind of this big epic story on stage. I had to perform in the end. I didn't want to, but I had to perform. And then I was just like, I didn't really like academia. So then I started writing about food because that's what I started doing. And then, so we have a rice like wine, I guess. And so I wrote a lot about that as well, which is called tuak, and which is like part of the farming cycle. So that's ended up becoming, how I ended up also writing about drinks was, I think we don't talk about drinks as part of a farming cycle or part of like culture and identity, and thinking about flavor in drinks as part of an identity and nostalgia as we do with food. And that's been my I have a magazine called Cheese Magazine as well, so I like cheese. I think whiskey and cheese is really good together.
You have a favorite pairing?
Well, I think like a lot of the American, I guess the saltiness of cheese obviously brings out the sweetness of whiskey. So I think a lot of the American, I think the bourbon is too sweet, but I think a lot of the other American, because I think American New Oak, and you guys know this more than me, so I hope I'm not being
like rye whiskey, are you saying?
Yeah, like a rye whiskey. Like I reckon we could get a really good soft washed rind to go with your. I don't know. Do you have a new whiskey recently that could work?
We just launched
bourbon. Do people do washed rind?
Oh no. Pardon?
Do they do washed rind with spirits as well? I mean, I know with brandies, but
I don't know, actually, probably.
We have.
You've done some?
Yeah, in Vermont. Yeah, we've partnered with a couple companies. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. I think a wash rind works really well with a whiskey, and it was the things that have been aged in like American New Oak works really nicely. That would be my.
Excuse me, I need to make a note of this.
You had mentioned Fosse, right? So
Yes.
I'm going to talk about we're going to talk about performance, and then we're going to move on. But Fosse, I was like, yes, Fosse forever.
Yeah, I'm like jazz hands for everything.
For real,
yeah. That's like the only time the only bone I've ever broken is a bone in my foot and in my metatarsal, and that was from doing a high kick. I would like to say that the person next to me was out of time, so she came down on my foot. But it's up for dispute. But I was going up and she was coming down, and I broke my foot.
It didn't work out. Yeah, I as well have lost toenails during performances, and I'm just like, we just gotta keep going. Like
totally, yeah. High kicks are dangerous, man. Like no one really understands this. Yeah,
people don't understand. Yeah, people don't understand. Okay. High kicks.
Take your word for it.
Toenails, bones broken. Like that's out of the way. You're fashioned. I've got Bossack 9, and you've got a dram as well. So let's kick it off proper. So I think what we want to do is just try to dig into some of your works, right? So I think the first place to start is Taste of Place, because you did that whole pepper, right?
Yes. So I've got a new podcast out, which is almost halfway through this. We'll have episode 5 this week. It's called Taste of Place, which is, it's actually re-looking at nostalgia and thinking about like our relationship with nostalgia in the past. Like, what does your childhood taste like? Like, what does that mean? Because like all of that is it's about place, like how does a space and a location taste like, and what do we understand it? And it's through the story of pepper, because particularly in the global north, everyone has a relationship or a story with pepper. Like it's the everyday thing that they don't think about, but when they think about, they're like, oh yeah, I had it, spaghetti bolognese or on my scrambled eggs, and then when you dig past that, like it opens up this ability to talk about what your memories are and how do we create memory and
memories.
And like flavor, taste, and smell are obviously key to unlocking memory or to building memory, new memories. And what is like the episode that just came out last week is about like what is flavor, like what does flavor mean? So and I think this is really relevant with drinks for sure. It's that flavor is taste, it's aroma, but it's also touch, and people forget that it's touch. Because if, for example, like chili or pepper is a touch sensation, it literally has molecules in it that cause pain. So
trigeminal nerve.
There you go. So like all those things, like mouthfeel is like part of taste, flavor, right?
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, trigeminal nerve, that's super important. Mouthfeel, I think. Yeah, it's so pepper. Okay, so you're saying that pepper is the most, I don't know, because of that triangulation of aroma, taste, trigeminal nerve is the epitome of unlocking your childhood scent memories, or
or just unlocking like because it goes straight to sort of the amygdala before you even understand or comprehend into the kind of language center of your brain. So how you build memory is all through taste and touch and kind of repetition of things like that as well. And it's just a really great way to kind of talk about, get into that sort of into the weeds really about like nostalgia and what does nostalgia mean and the kind of emotive side of nostalgia and the kind of dangerous side of nostalgia, which I'm really interested in. Then there's collective nostalgia, like, colonialism and how we understand colonialism. And we have a really weird relationship with that. I mean, the British do, I'm sure the US do as well. This is, romantic and nostalgic and longing for, longing for a past that never existed, right? Like, and how do we re-look at that past? And I think through taste and smell and flavor, we can kind of investigate that past and I mean, I say that with pepper, because my family grew it on the farm. I say that like me looking in pepper is re-looking at my childhood space and seeing that space as spaces of labor, which is really jarring, right? Like going and seeing a place that you think of as childhood and romantic and lovely and safe, and seeing people working really, really hard and, and I'm sure doing well, some people doing well, not some people not doing well, but you don't think of those spaces as spaces of labor.
And even danger. I mean, I know, and as I said, I grew up in farm country, and there were accidents almost every week. Yeah, it's dangerous
so physical
work.
Mm.
Yeah, and you can't then. I mean, there are some crops where they've gotten around a lot of the physical labor, but as you and I will admit, as I mentioned to you before we came on, I did listen to the first episode of your podcast this morning. Entrancing, but you mentioned how I mean, it's really completely manual labor with pepper. Even now, there's you can't mechanize it apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, good pepper, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I was just having a conversation over the weekend with some people about saffron. Same thing. I mean, wholly manual and, oh my God, numbingly manual. Yeah.
So. Yeah. When we forget, we separate that. So, and everything that kind of like, and this is again why drink's so interesting, because it's like, we were saying before about, you can look at corn in the field and be like, oh, I can eat that. I can see that it's agriculture, and then I can kind of understand that people have planted and grown it. But you look at drinks and you're like,
so separated.
Yeah.
It's separated, but it's honestly one of the greatest things about being in the whiskey industry is that it is rooted in agriculture. And yes, that was a pun.
And you have a whole storeroom full of them, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Sits right here. Of course. So we're a farm distillery, and I love that. Because we do sit on 500 acres, and it's amazing knowing that we have control of the farming and whiskey production. So maybe that's a good segue in terms of like what we're looking out for in terms of terroir, in terms of taste of place. So what does taste of place mean for you?
For me, so this idea of terroir, the more I think about it, and I've been thinking about it for a long time, I think, particularly I've been looking at pepper for over 5 years and speaking to a lot of farmers, and so that's kind of been my way in. But thinking about it, for me, it's really about the people. I just don't think you can have drinks or food or anything without the people, because they have the knowledge, and there's a thing like the taste of hands, not literal, but you're tasting hands.
Hands. No, that's gonna be on a thing. Tasting
hands.
So I think this is an important conversation, because terroir means a lot of different things. Specifically with, I think, the whiskey industry. Some people believe it doesn't exist, right? We're aware of that.
I've talked to those people.
And again, I always say, if you get 20 distillers in a room, you're going to get 20 different definitions. And so for you, if you had to distill down, again, Lou, puns.
I heard that one.
Terroir.
You should write headlines, Liz. They do this shit all the time.
Yeah, I should.
Yeah, you should. I'm so bad at this. You can do mine.
I came up with one, right? Rivolution.
Yes, in fact, I told my friend about it afterwards. I was like, I've just had this interview and this was amazing.
Thank you. But no, if you had to describe, I'm sorry, Lou. Welcome.
That's good. I mean, Anna practically promised we were going to digress at some point, and if it's a bunch of little ones, that's okay too.
If you had to put one thing to terroir for you and what that means, what would it be?
I think it's the interaction. I'd say it's the interaction of people and environment.
Okay.
Because I think that's the relationship, right? Like it's that constant interaction and the constant relationship, how the person relates to the soil, how the person relates to their other workers to come up with a solution to grow the crops better or whatever it is, how that person reacts and relates to and makes decisions with the malter, the distiller, et cetera, and then the decision of like the distiller and the blender and all that kind of stuff, what that interaction is with the liquid, the mash, their other people to make the flavor, like that constant interaction. I think it's that middle bit between everything.
People.
I remember I used to when I was writing more about beer. I always had I thought one of the overlooked ingredients was intent. You know, what do you want it to be? And you don't just kind of throw stuff together. You have a plan and you direct what you're doing at that. I think that's absolutely. I love that the interaction of the natural elements and the human elements. Yeah, that's great.
So I really love that, and I go back to right. So on the heels of beer judging, right?
That's right. You were out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And sticking to a style, but it's like at the end of the day, is this good or is it not good? And I'm kind of in that position of, is it good? Is it not good? And that's a human, right? That's a human interaction. And I think sensory is a key piece to that. That's a part of terroir. In my mind, it's scent memories, for example, that we talked about. And maybe I'm more inclined to like something subjectively versus you, Anna, right? Just based on our scent memories. But that being said, like, so we've had this conversation, but is terroir the right word? I don't know. Like, it's not really, because if you talk to a winemaker and they're like, you are a bastard, you know, like you're bastardizing, if that's a word, this term. So is there another term that you would, both Lou and Anna?
No, I think it needs to, I think terroir needs to be developed. But this is, Lou was saying this before about there is a very different understanding between terroir in France and terroir in the US. So my understanding of terroir comes from the French understanding, which is a much wider concept, which is about knowledge and past and history. So it takes into like the there was such a great sound effect, by the way, of popping that bottle open. And
it's a real squeaker.
Cool. Anyway, actually, it sounds like a song by Dinosaur Jr. at the beginning of the song. It does pop. Anyway, that's really nice. I like that. Sorry, I digress. I digress all the time. But
I know exactly what song you're talking about.
So it's like the environment. So the environment, then if you think about what the environment is, and the environment is people and it is knowledge. But I hadn't realized that was not something that was thought of in the US.
Again, that's how I learned something today. I'm not a wine person. I drink it, I enjoy it. But that's what I was told by some wine people, that there is a difference in the concept there and there. And
the language.
No, I'm just saying. I agree. That I think the broader French idea is, especially for whiskey, it works better for whiskey.
Yeah, and I think going back to terroir at its roots. Again, I'm sorry.
Oh my God! You slid in another one. Okay. Sorry, Liz. You were saying. Are you well grounded in the idea of terroir? Is that
I believe it to be true, right? There's been a lot of research that's been done, especially with rye, with barley as well, in terms of what varietals are grown, where it's being grown.
this whole thing?
Yeah, exactly.
The Waterford Project.
Yeah.
Whiskeys that are made exactly the same way, same type of barrel, same place, same distilling method, same wheat, same strain of barley. Only difference is where the barley's grown. Noticeable differences.
Exactly. And there's a huge research that went out from Michigan State as well, looking at again, like what if we're minting this way, in the Upper Peninsula versus
right, okay, sorry. Now I get it. Yeah.
And so I think it's super fascinating, and it's not just the varietals, right? We know that there's certain conditions genetically, genotypically, for example, hydrocinamic and cinnamic acids, HCAs. So that's an example, which translates to, the spice character that we love in rye. But there's other characteristics as well. So
you mean where it's grown will have an effect on the amount of that?
There's genes involved, but then there's also environmental conditions. So if you talk about rainfall, for example, and that has an effect on protein levels versus starch,
Have you done anything on latitude?
I'm just writing notes, so just
like
okay.
length of day and that kind of thing. Because apparently they've studied that on hops, and it has an effect. How much sunlight per day it gets?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but I know rainfall specifically affects that. But maybe this new study from Michigan State has something in that. I haven't read it in full yet.
So I've got a question.
Okay.
But also water makes a difference.
We were asking the question. Sorry. Oh, the type of water they're getting? Or
yes, exactly. Or like the water that gets used within making
with
beer and
actually mashing or
right. Like that must make a lot of difference because of the pH levels.
It does, 100%. So that's something. So a lot of people, I would say, treat their water, for example. So it's something I always recommend. So it's city water. It's not normally treated. Some people do like sand filtration, or they do a chlorine removal as well, but that's just boiling, right? And I would say, depending on the chemical makeup of the particular water chemistry, some people do add, calcium, for example. One of the things, though, is acidification. That's something that most people do.
Of the water?
Yeah. Or the mash specifically.
Right.
And I always recommend phosphoric because it's a better acidifier versus citric. A lot of people use citric, but I prefer phosphoric.
Tip
of the day.
I'll make a note of that as well. Let me just get that.
Hot tip.
Because one of the things so I have another publication called Sourced, which looks at how basically our food and drink pathways, and so household ingredients, and we focus on an ingredient.
Well, I would say, so I'm going to follow this up as well when we're on the water conversation about stillage and backset.
Or setback.
Or setback. What?
Sorry. I can never resist that. Sorry.
Sour mash, right? You've heard of this.
Yes.
Yeah. So typically that's just pretty much referring to the recycling of stillage, usually thin stillage. And it's great because I love utilizing thin backset or thin stillage to set a mash or a fermentation, etc. Not only because it's a water savings, right? So that's a sustainability angle, but also because you're able to recoup the pH, so some acidification, but also B vitamins and other minerals, autolyzed yeast cells, and all of that is kind of really helpful for the next fermentation. So it's an efficient way of processing. It's an efficient way of distilling. However, not all craft distilleries are set up for that because they don't have the tank space, they don't have the production schedule, whatever. But there's a lot of new products out in the market with Fermentis and Lallemand, so two different yeast companies that are actually they have active dried bacterial packages to supply to craft distilling that's able to kind of reap the same results. So that's something actually that we're playing with right now.
Okay.
So
anyway, you were talking, Anna.
No, I'm really fascinated because I'm really fascinated about water in the process of in multiple drinks. Obviously, it goes in. Because I've got this a publication called Sourced, and we did a whole section on water, and I thought it was interesting as an ingredient. So 3 months just commissioning stories on water, and one of the stories was we commissioned was about Burton water and beer. And that then it got a trend for people to try and make the water that they're using to beer to the same specification as Burton water in the UK, which is also really weird because Burton is just like this tiny place. And to think about this tiny place's water now having an effect across the globe is like, right? Yeah, it's so, yeah, anyway. So that was just, so I'm just fascinated by water, that's all.
I mean, water is amazing, right? That's where it all starts. So, we did get a ping from Megan, which is our head blender. So, hey, Megan, thanks for joining. Happy Boss Hog Day. I know people say that in wine a lot, day length and where the sun hits on the vines all will change with flavor. So that's something specifically for wine. I don't know if we've done the research specifically for whiskey, though, to say that makes
for grain.
Yeah, grain.
With grapes, it's to do with then getting the sugar levels. The sun creates the sugar levels, and I have no idea about grain, how that sugar levels affected by sunshine.
I would assume with the hops, it's the alpha acids levels. The bittering would come from the same kind of process. I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I go back to rainfall. Knowing that more rain is less protein and more starch in grain.
Well, I remember when we had Nick Nagel on from Whiskey Acres. They have moisture probes all through the field to find out which different areas of the field are getting more rain, which is really granular. But they're doing a lot of I mean, part of it is for making whiskey, part of it is for making better whiskey in the future. So
as in like as the climate changes to
just knowing things. When do we have to irrigate, and how much. But I really think that's one of the things that has and I don't know if this is I don't think this is a terroir. It's more a process thing, and I'm not sure where that fits into that whole definition. But data collection has just had an enormous effect on whiskey making. Knowing what barrels produce the whiskey, where in the warehouse the barrels are, temperature, and just knowing that, and then being able to shift those factors to where you want them.
I was in a rum distillery in Seychelles, and they had everything was data collected. Everything was barcoded. They were pulling everything from all their barrels. It was just like it was mad. It was really cool, but it was quite strange to think about. Yeah, and they were like, "Oh no, we only do it in this corner because this corner makes this X, Y, and Z," and because we pulled out all this information. It's this tiny little like space that they were, it's not a massive distillery, but I was like, "Oh, this is cool."
Yeah,
It's strange.
yeah. Then I remember going to Dickel one time in the warehouse. There was literally a piece of cardboard up on the wall, and somebody writing on it with a Sharpie, and that was data collection.
Also
Data's data.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Awesome. So obviously, taste of place, that's super important with what the work you're doing in food with pepper. Do you want to talk more about cultural references? Maybe we can.
Yeah. I mean, I think cultural references, again, we're going back to flavor. It's like, I think you said something before about like me and you would have a different like perception about things because we have different reference points, right? Like the best thing is for me, or the thing I know the most is, well, whiskey and coffee. So because I spend a lot of time from Malaysia and I spend a lot of time back there, coffee, when you're trying to, I've got a good friend who makes coffee there, roasts coffee, and their descriptions of their coffee is totally different to how they describe coffee here. And also how we drink whiskey in Malaysia is super like I think is very different to how we drink it here, and also what people like and how people explain the reference points and the fruit flavors or the spices. It's totally different, and I think that's like and exploring that is fun, and I think we should be more like open to, I mean, I'm sure obviously you guys are, but like it as a sort of a consumer general space, and that will also make more of it an accessible way of thinking about drinks, I think, which
That's
can feel
actually a problem I
intimidating.
see online, that there's an awful lot of gatekeeping,
Yes.
wanting to decide exactly how you can and cannot describe whiskey and telling you, no, you don't really taste that. I remember somebody we had on earlier, Davin de Kergamo. Davin went on a I don't know, I think it was a junket to Taiwan with some Canadian whiskeys that had been sold over there. And he made a specific point of that, the difference in vocabulary for describing whiskeys. And even, I mean, the Canadian whiskeys, and then they naturally enough got to drinking single malts as well because they're there. Why not? And he said, it's just words you didn't understand. And I remember one of my first trips to Scotland, I was there with John Hansel, who was the editor at Whiskey Advocate at the time. And at one point we had an afternoon off, and he took me to a grocery store. And he just started buying all the little things like Dundee cakes and Jaffa cakes and orange marmalade, so I could taste the things that Scots use to describe the flavor of single malt. Because I'd see these references all the time. I had no idea what the hell a Jaffa cake was.
Christmas cake. That one bothers me because I'm just like, Christmas cake. And also, if you don't celebrate Christmas, like, then what are we gonna do here?
There you are.
And like Christmas cake is so like is very different as well. Like I think
from family to family.
From family to family. Yeah. Like it's totally. I mean, one of the like again, like in how you associate. So I think of whiskey as a food drink, right? And people don't like because in Malaysia, like my uncle, he's not really my uncle, but he's kind of my uncle because he's like family friend, Uncle Simon, he drinks whiskey when we go out to dinner. And so he drinks whiskey, like he's Chinese. So we have big Chinese meals, and we drink whiskey whilst we eat Chinese food. And so for me, I'm like, oh no, whiskey's a dinner drink, right? Like, what are you talking about? Because when you taste it, like in that context, again, it's the salt and the sharpness really works super nicely, and you can sip and you can. So then my understanding, because I didn't come from this like nerdy drinks world at all. I just came from like I just like to drink, and I worked in bars and that kind of stuff. And I was just like, oh yeah, this makes total sense. It's these reference points that like, and when you think about flavors, it's I like the idea of going around supermarkets though and pulling out the things.
It was brilliant.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah.
Although I remember there were some tasting notes I came across when I was editing, the things like a specific type of ant when you crush it. I'm not going to be
No.
for that one. I'm
Really?
going to take your word for that.
What was the flavor note?
I can't remember. It was like a sharp chemical
Ants,
note.
yeah, ants are very
No.
citrusy.
Yeah.
It's like a citrus. Ants give a citrus flavor to food.
There were. I remember
Really?
when I was growing up, we had a problem with what are they? Carpenter ants, and I still remember that smell.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like also like when I think of crispiness, when I was a kid, there was this one time where we had grasshoppers and we fried out grasshoppers. And I think when people are like, oh yeah, it's like really crunchy, like a fried grasshopper. I mean, no one here is going to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know that texture? No.
I know.
No, Anna, you
Not
don't.
I think that's an important topic, because whenever I'm trying to create tasting notes, it's just very rudimentary. Like, it's very translatable. It's very, here are 3 things. But, again, it's like, this is what I see.
Mm.
But what do you see? And that could be a crunchy grasshopper or what, like, I'm not you, right? I'm not the one appraising in that moment. But I just like to stick it to like about 3 descriptors.
Mm. It is really nice. Like, I've seen such a change in the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years max, but like really recently. And I do think like lockdown has kind of played a little part in that. I think that people have, they couldn't go to their bars and their restaurants. They didn't have the experts around, so they were kind of feeling their own way through. And so also writers were sort of feeling their own way through. And so there's been, I think, a real like shift in like talking about flavor in sort of different ways. That I think is really interesting, and again, like makes this more accessible, and sort of saying to people, what is it that you taste? Like, what is it that you feel? That is all really valid. And I think there is a real shift in that.
Yeah, and I think again, and so this is a millennial in me speaking here, but it's back to experience, right? I don't want someone just to tell me what I'm supposed to smell or taste or whatever. I want to experience it myself, and I want to, and maybe I get transported back to the time I had fried grasshoppers. Or, whatever. It's all set memories, and so I think that's super enjoyable for me. And so I try not to take that away from others. Some people do need some guidance, obviously. Right, Lou?
I really don't like doing numbers anymore. I just don't want to rate things at all.
Interesting.
Really don't.
Rating,
because I did that for years with the magazine, and I just, and then I I go back and look at them now. I'm like, so why did I say that was a 92 instead of a 90? What does that even mean? I don't know. So now I just, would I like this again? Would I like it again tomorrow? Would I like it again in a month or so?
So just a quick segue to numeric.
Oh no, just a throwaway.
Okay, all right.
But you can if you want. Do you want to?
Yeah, let's.
Okay.
What is the segue? I'm now curious.
Yeah.
What are our feelings around the numeric system around rating products?
Various numeric systems, I would say. Yeah.
As in like just rating things.
Whiskey reviews or anything really.
Whatever publication.
Yeah, I'm super anti it as well, because unless you state what you mean by things, I think Saleho,
it's
who's
very nebulous, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But on the other hand, I've found that if you go too granular, it almost becomes meaningless too.
Yeah,
it's a hard thing to get a handle on, which is why I'm not in favor.
But do you think so? Right, we're not the consumers. We're not the end users.
That's it. A lot of consumers find it awfully useful.
Okay, but like, why and why do you think it's useful?
I think it's a shortcut a lot of times, and that's one. I mean, that's one of the earliest reasons I was against it, because I really wanted to encourage people to not just look for the highest number and go by that, and when they don't even know if that's the kind of stuff they like.
Right.
Find out.
a great a great bourbon, but maybe I don't like or whatever. I don't like this flavor profile, or it's too ethyl acetate or whatever. Like,
You
do
think
you
people
think
talk themselves into this stuff?
you think that's better than age statements?
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay. No, and Anna, I'm curious of your thoughts as well. So, all right, so let's reframe. Point system versus age statement.
So I don't really I understand age statements, obviously, because it's, an age or whatever, but I'm instinctively against it because it feels like old white dudes trying to be impressive.
Or no, I'd agree with you. Or be impressed.
Or be impressed. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Or to
yeah.
and so then it becomes a status, and then it takes away from why it was done. And I think I'm just pretty anti-establishment generally. So it's just like this instinct for me to be like, oh no, I'm not into this. And like, I'm not saying I'm correct. Like, I can be definitely persuaded that I am wrong. But like instinctively, I'm just like, oh, who came up with this? This is like, no. Also possibly the millennial in me wanting to like
I'm just kind of a contrarian. That's all. That's my excuse.
So you've obviously worked in food for a bit. So how does that translate? In the booze versus food?
So like restaurant reviews always seem to have ratings, right? And there's this the San Francisco Sileho Ho, who is the critic for San Francisco newspaper. She took away, when she took over, and the rating system, and she explained.
I remember reading about that.
Yeah, and it was super interesting. And I think that sort of, but making a statement of why, and so then it encourages the reader to go, okay, I'm going to read into this, and what bits can I take out? But if you're writing a short review, you can't necessarily go into it for sure. I like what you were saying, Liz, though, about like the 3 flavor statements, and I like that idea of like maybe having very short numbers, so you can kind of like 1 for vibe and flavor. I don't know, like it gave me a vibe, but whatever, like, and why, like, I don't know, do you know what I mean? Like somehow, like, and then there's one rating that's this, or yeah, exactly. Oh, this is quite sweet, so it's great with this or something, and so I'd rate this a 3 or something. I think like when you rate cheese, there are 5 different like things to rate it on. And then like a statement of 10. No, I mean, I should be able to, but I can't think about it right on the top of my head. But it's like kind of like, it's like I love
this. I can never do this shit either. Sorry. This is making me feel really good.
It's like dryness, like moisture, like nuttiness, like acid and things like that. So you can kind of, and then by looking at that at a glance, because there's like 5 different points, you can kind of go, oh yeah, that's the vibe I want, is something soft, so and it's like salty.
The numeric equivalent of a spider pattern.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that's quite nice. There's like I mean, in food, I think people are really into. People love rating stuff, though. No, I mean,
yes.
I think people love numbers.
Yeah. or do people just like to be really judgmental and be?
And maybe it's a part of feeling, a part of something, right?
Yeah.
You've got the knowledge now.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe that's not a bad thing. I don't know. I'm super, like, in a lot of ways I'm very opinionated about these things, but I'm also kind of open to being persuaded otherwise, or like it's just nice having lots of the drinks world is becoming a lot nicer because there's a lot of different opinions. I think, as you're saying, like, it's also nice to hear people who don't believe in terroir. Like, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of that is important to the conversation, and it's not black and white anymore. And I'm sorry, that was probably a poor choice of reference, but at the end of the day, diversity is important, and it's of course that's something that I'm passionate about, being a young female in the whiskey industry. And I think what was that, Lou? Like what?
Oh no, something caught my eye. It was just my
Okay.
wife in the refrigerator, actually. That's
Oh.
all. Sorry.
So I think diversity of thought is important, and that's how I think our industry will evolve and continue to evolve. And new ideas, new frame of references.
I've always kind of thought that having the discussion is at least as important as the results of the discussion. Talking about it almost always. People like, why do you waste so much time talking about whiskey on Facebook when you could be writing? I'm like, you know what? I hear from other people and I get ideas.
Sure.
There's a lot of really useless junk, but there's some really good ideas too.
Something that could spark your interest or something. All the time, because again, we're a super innovative company, and I'm like, oh well, that's interesting. Like, how can we?
And I think sometimes we're so concentrated on the answer, and the answer's not that interesting. It's trying to find the question, because if you have the wrong question, then you're going to get the wrong answer, right?
Exactly. Yep, I love that. Yeah. Okay, so we're repeating that. Say it again.
If you don't have the right question, you're going to get the wrong answer. So you have to do all the work to find the right question.
Brilliant. Okay, so we've got...
that's a motivational poster right there, right? Yeah.
We've got about 5 minutes left, so I just want to circle back and ask you, if the future of our business was up to you, like, what are you most excited about, like, in the future?
I'm excited about people like you. Like,
thank you.
Yeah, this is exciting. Like, I love the fact that we met at like a kind of ridiculous bar in Paris and had some ridiculous interactions with other people, and then got to have this like intense conversation about like sustainability and what the future is and what it is that you do, and I think that is like this idea of conversation. I think conversations are happening in so many different places than they were before, and that is the way that this industry is going to change. And having all those multiple spaces to have fun and have conversations with intent is great.
With intent. And I agree. So I'll say this is my last pun, Lou. I wholeheartedly it's conversation. So we're all busy, right? And we're all in our own worlds, but it's very nice to have the interaction, because I think that's when progress happens. Whether or not we're getting inspired, we're meeting someone new, we're learning about a different culture, we're learning about, something else that's happening. And I think that's how we progress, especially as an industry, is just being aware and being educated of what's out there. Especially, and I'll just, again, sustainability, but DINK, I'll say that.
I feel like that a lot of that is happening in an unforced way. I mean, the two of you ran into each other. I mean, it wasn't at a conference or, in a seminar or a question period. You were just talking about this kind of stuff, and this kind of stuff has become interesting and important enough to have conversations about, and there are more and more people who can and will, and I think that's a huge step forward. I mean, for the industry, sure, but I mean, in a much more broad sense as well.
Absolutely.
All right, so you're drinking an old fashioned.
Yes, it's drunk. It's gone.
Yes.
What's your favorite whiskey or cocktail that you were imbibing right now?
I mean, old fashioned or a Manhattan. I'm
I need to drink more Manhattans. I really do.
I'm like a martini or a Manhattan girl.
Okay, I'm a Boulevardier. So
ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to be honest. I'm a neat drinker mostly. Neat or a cube.
Neat or a cube. Awesome.
not really a cocktail guy that often.
So we don't have any questions, which is fine. However, I think we do have our nice little green rectangle at the end of the page, which is a link to your latest podcast. You want to tell us what your latest podcast is about?
Oh, so, well, I mean, we've sort of been talking about, but like, yeah, so Taste a Place, and we are, almost halfway through a 10 episode series, and it's super nerdy, but also very funny. We go back in time and look at weird fish from the medieval times, episode 2. I'm not going to tell you anymore. And then we go forward. And then we go forward and have like the last episode, and then I go back to Malaysia and go back to having a wild party for the harvest festival, and then the last episode is a party as well. So it's got it all.
That's great.
That sounds amazing. So of course, like click the green rectangle. You can check out Anna's podcast.
Go listen to that. It's good stuff.
Listen to it. I see we have a few friends chiming in.
Hey, Frank. See you there, buddy.
Hey, you were just up there, right?
Not quite. I was in Southwest Michigan, like way down in the corner of Journeyman Distilling.
Yeah.
Good time. Just judged a beer festival, actually. So, but it was awesome. We didn't do any number ratings. We just we drank beers and then argued about which was the best one. It was cool. It was a lot of fun.
Maybe we can do jazz hands instead of ratings.
like jazz
this one here
and jazz hands.
Exactly. Throw it a high kick when it gets real exciting.
Roll hat, like it'll be awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
But what are the numbers? Don't know.
Did you see my jazz hands? Were you paying attention?
You're asking about numbers?
All right, Anna, it's been super awesome. Lou, do you want to what we got next?
Yeah, actually, next week we have. I hesitate to call him an old friend, but I've known Christian for a few years. Christian Krogstedt from Westward Whiskey in Portland is going to join us, and Liz and I are going to grill him about how a brewer becomes a distiller and why that matters. So,
yeah, brewer distiller right here.
Yeah, it's all about the malt, baby.
Yeah, so we have tons of questions for him next week. Anna, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was super fun. Yeah, I really had a good time.
Thanks for coming on.
Cool.
And everyone else, thank you so much. Boss Hog 9, go get some.
Happy Boss Hog Day. Bye, guys.
All right, everyone. Bye.
Bye.